Hello, I'm Tom Milnes. I'm an artist and I'm showing work at Studio Kind. So my work is titled SCANITAS, so that's a play on the word vanitas, which is a form of still life that was popular in Flemish painting hundreds of years ago. And those works looked at playing around with ideas of ephemerality or to do with temporality of life. And my works, again, are also playing around with the sort of temporality or the fragility of technology in some ways. So these works, using 3D scanning, are looking at the forms or the objects that confuse and cause issues for 3D scanning in that image forming technology. So things like transparent objects, complex, patterned, overly sort of plain or bland objects cause a lot of issues for 3D scanners. And so part of these objects in the still lifes shown here are actually, deliberately to glitch and cause aberrations into the 3D scan image. So the sculptural works and the sort of more 3D paper works are created. I discovered this technique called pepakura, which just happened to be when I was looking at 3D scanning and ways of 3D printing things. It's like a hobbyist form of software or pastime, I guess, where people take 3D models and they start to create paper versions of it, and it's often used by cosplayers to sort of make Iron Man helmets and various bits of their costumes and models of things that they find online, but it can be applied to any 3D model. So I started to use it with 3D scans, which are a lot more complex, but you get these really interesting three-dimensional forms with some of the glitches sort of manifested. The way it works is that you take a 3D scan of an object, you edit it, simplify it slightly, and then you put it through different forms of software, including the pepakura software, and it creates a flat net out of the 3D objects, and you print that out on a normal inkjet or laser printer, and then you have to cut it out, fold it and stick it together. So all the sculptures here are in fact laboriously and painstakingly crafted digitally and physically, often taking many hours, days to sort of cut out and stick together. So I wanted to play with this idea of the physical and virtual. So these works are physical objects that have been virtualized and they are scans. However, I quite like this idea of clipping that you get in video games and digital works where objects just will sink into the floor sort of weightlessly, or they'll be floating and they get combined or just twinned together in some way. So that's what I started to play around with some of these, that they are digital objects and so that's why some of them are sinking into the floor or sort of cutting into the walls. So it gives it, again, that sort of digitality, I guess, in that it's a physical object, but they sort of start to play with their surroundings in digital ways because they have unique digital qualities, I think, in the glitchiness and the textures being kind of compressed and sort of smeared and warped, things like that. So it's quite nice to bring sort of a duality to the way they feel as physical objects as well. So some of the objects in the show are around this idea of the still life, and they are selected because they're made of glass or metallic and shiny. They are complex, so they create these sort of glitches within the pieces. They also fit in with this idea of the vanitas of like these objects that are vanity or in some ways fit in with the ideas of them being still life objects as well. And that's encapsulated in some of the 2D works as well. You can see each one has sort of a focus on each object. Some of these are the textures that actually form part of the sort of skin of the 3D objects as well, and you can see them flattened in some of the prints and the Riso works. And this is in some ways an ode to printing techniques that are available and able to do these kinds of works. It's not just about the 3D technology, it's about it's an opportunity to play around with some of the different forms, different ways of working with print that most people wouldn't do normally, sort of actually printing things out, cutting them out, making them 3D, but also working with the sort of layers of colour, so certainly within the rhizoprint, to draw out the sort of three-dimensionality of some of the works as well, or some of the textures and colours.